Lonely rancher bought a deaf girl sold by her stepmother, then realized she heard. The rope creaked in the rafters of the auction shed. It sounded thin and strained, like a voice that no one wanted to hear. Lantern light trembled on the plank walls. The air smelled of old wood, horse sweat, and the sour thread of spilled whiskey. Men stood shoulder to shoulder in a ring, hats low, faces damp, eyes bright with a kind of hunger that did not belong to food. On the block stood a girl. She was barefoot. Her dress was torn at the hem and thin at the shoulders. Her wrists were bound with rawhide. Dark hair fell across her cheeks. Her face was pale and bruised at the edge of the jaw. She could not be more than 17. The trader called her Mira. He said she was deaf. He said she did not speak. He said she would work for any man who paid. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. At the back, near the open door where the evening wind slid in, stood Callum Hayes. He was 48, broad at the shoulders and worn by weather. Grey threaded his black beard. A scar marked his jaw like a thin white stitch. His duster was sun-faded and heavy with dust from the range. He had not come to buy anyone. He had come for fence wire and salt blocks, but the sound of the rope and the sight of the girl pulled at something old inside him, something that never let him sleep past dawn. Beside the trader stood Letty Pike. She was in her early 60s. Her face was sharp, her eyes a cold blue. She wore a stern black dress and held a silver cane with a serpent's head for a handle. The cane tapped lightly on wood, as if it were counting the heartbeats of the room. "She does not hear," Letty said, her voice smooth. "She does not speak. She obeys." The auctioneer lifted the girl's arm as if he were showing a saddle. Mira kept her head lowered. Her hands trembled, yet the tremble had rhythm, as if she were counting under her breath. Callum shifted his boot. It crushed straw with a dry crunch. Mira flinched. It was small, but it was there. If she was deaf, why did she turn toward the sound? The bidding began. Numbers struck the air and fell like stones into a well. Callum did not want to join them. He did anyway. His voice came out steady and low. Bids rose, the trader's smile sharpened. Letty's eyes thinned. The lanterns hissed where the oil was nearly spent. The hammer fell. The rawhide came loose. Mira did not look at Callum. Her eyes lifted only once. They were dark and storm-steady. They watched. They measured. Then they lowered again. Callum took the bill of sale and stepped from the shed with the girl at his side. Behind them, the rope stopped creaking, but the question did not. If she is deaf, why does she hear the small things? The night would answer, and it would draw blood. Outside, the sky was a deep copper fading toward purple. The town's lanterns flickered in doorways and threw weak halos on dust. The boardwalks creaked under boots. Somewhere a player piano tried a bright tune and gave up after 3 notes. The air had the cool bite that comes before midnight. Letty Pike waited at the gate. The silver serpent on her cane caught the light. "You are welcome," she said, as if she granted a favor rather than collected a price. "She does not hear. She does not speak. If she troubles you, a strap will do the work." Her mouth held the shape of a smile, but it had no warmth in it. Callum met her eyes. "There are other ways to teach," he said. Letty's gaze moved to Mira. It was not a mother's gaze. It was the stare of a manager looking at a ledger. Behind Letty lounged Jeb Pike and Orrin Pike, her nephews. Jeb was 35, wiry with a bristle beard and a mean grin that never reached his eyes. Orrin was 33, broader in the shoulders, with a thin scar along his upper lip, and a stare that liked to make other people flinch. Jeb spat tobacco near Mira's bare foot. "Say goodbye to your mama," he said. The word felt wrong in his mouth. Letty's jaw tightened, a brief pulsing of the skin near the ear. She tapped her cane twice and turned away. Callum guided Mira to the livery, where his roan gelding waited. A lantern hung from a hook and threw a rough pool of gold across hay and plank. Callum pointed to his chest. "Hayes," he said. "Callum Hayes." Mira watched his mouth. She touched her own chest with 2 fingers. "Mira," he mimed water. She nodded once. He cupped water from the trough. She drank quickly, neat and practiced, then set the cup aside and stilled. Her head tilted. Her eyes cut toward the alley. The quiet jingle of a spur drifted in. She heard it. Callum was sure. Letty's cane clicked behind them. "Thy gentleman returns what does not fit," she said. "She is not a boot," Callum answered. The lantern smoked. Shadows darkened the corners of the livery. Mira's hands trembled again. She looked at Callum, then to the side, then down. With one finger she traced a word in the dust on the barrel head. Danger. Callum's breath slowed. He studied the word until the letters seemed to lift from the wood. He looked up. In the alley, two shapes shifted where the light did not reach. Jeb's smile floated there like a cut on the dark. Orin's hand rested on his revolver. Callum set the empty cup down. He placed himself between Mira and the alley. The horses shifted in their stalls. Leather creaked. The smell of grain and sweat grew thick. Outside, the town seemed to draw a single long breath and hold it. Letty's voice came from the doorway, the words even and clear. "You will hand her back, or we will take her." Mira reached for Callum's sleeve. Her touch was light and urgent. The word on the barrel remained. The dust around it settled. The lantern flame bent under a gust from the open door. The alley behind the livery smelled of whiskey, old piss, and coal smoke. A weak lantern burned over a crooked door and made a puddle of light that did not reach the ground. Crates leaned against the wall like tired men. The night pressed tight between the buildings. Callum stepped out first. His duster swung open. His revolver hung heavy at his hip. His boots found the center of the alley and held it. He did not look left or right. He kept his eyes on the space ahead, where the light met the dark. Jeb Pike slid from that dark. His hat was pushed back. His grin was fixed. He had his thumb under the strap of his pistol belt in a way that said he would enjoy using the gun. Orin Pike came from the other side, broader, slower, more certain. His scar caught the light. His eyes were bright and flat. "Wreck," Jeb began, then chuckled and reset. "I suppose there was a mistake," he said. "The lady changed her mind." "The bill of sale says otherwise," Callum answered. He kept his tone calm and even. "Walk away," Orin's mouth bent. "You are guarding a lamb that cannot bleat," he said. "That is a poor use of a man." Callum did not move. Behind him, Mira crouched behind a barrel. Her eyes were wide but steady. Her breath came fast but even. She watched hands. She watched feet. She watched shadows where guns like to live. Letty's cane tapped once at the far end where the alley met the yard. She did not step into the lantern pool. "You hand her back," she called, "or we take her." "That is all the law we need." Jeb moved first. His hand dropped to his pistol. Callum stepped and drew. The first shot split the alley like a hammer splits a board. Jeb's hat flew. Blood marked his ear as if someone had painted a stripe there. Orin raised his gun. Mira snatched a handful of grit and threw it into his face. He cursed and fired blind. Wood splinters jumped from a post. The lantern swung and threw the shadows into a wild dance. Callum shoved Mira deeper behind the barrel and fired again. Orin's gun hopped out of his grip and clattered across the dirt. Jeb pressed a hand to his ear and swore softly. "Bring me the sheriff," Letty said, as if she were calling for tea. Orin spat grit. "The sheriff is playing cards with you, Aunt Letty," he said. "Exactly," Letty answered. Mira tugged Callum's sleeve. She leaned close. Her lips shaped the words more than spoke them. "They will kill you." The sound was faint. It was a breath, but it was a sound. Callum looked at her. For a moment, the alley fell away. She was not deaf. She had been silent by choice or by fear or both. The truth opened like a door. He took her hand. "We run," he said. They ran toward the street where the moon opened the town like a map, and salvation waited somewhere past a gate of guns. And as they ran, his voice reached the part of the night that holds an audience. "Friend, if you are gripped by this tale, hit that like button right now, because the fight is only just beginning." They burst from the alley into the main street. Lanterns swung on chains under the saloon awning. Their flames leaned hard in the wind and threw long, narrow shadows across the dust. A piano clanged a single note and went silent. Men at the doors turned to watch. Callum lifted Mira into the saddle of the roan. "Hold tight," he said. He swung up behind her and drove his heels. The horse lunged into the street, hooves pounding, breath coming hot. Behind them, hoofbeats broke loose like a fall of stones. Jeb and Orin rode hard. 2 more men came with them. One wore a bright silver badge that took the moon and threw it back in broken pieces. The badge did not mean safety. Not in this town. Not tonight. Bullets cracked the air. One tore the brim of Callum's hat and sent it spinning into the dark. Another hit the post beside the mercantile. and threw splinters that sang as they fell. Mira flinched and then held herself still. Callum bent over her, making a wall of his body. They reached the edge of town and dropped into the arroyo. The dry riverbed twisted through clay walls the moon could not climb. The horses' hooves struck hard earth. Dust rose and drifted like smoke. The sound of pursuit echoed and doubled around bends. Mira pointed left, quick and sharp. A narrow split opened there, choked with mesquite, no more than a wound in the clay. Callum trusted her, pulled the reins and forced the roan into the cut. Branches clawed at sleeves and tore threads from the duster. For a breath they were hidden. The pursuers overshot. Their shouts rolled past like thunder. Then the shot came. It sounded close and mean. The roan screamed and stumbled. The shoulder buckled. The weight tipped. Callum pulled Mira and threw them both clear as the horse went down. The ground hit hard. Dust filled his mouth. He rose. Pain burned along his forearm and at his side. Blood darkened his sleeve. Mira tugged him toward the wall of the cut. Her eyes were bright and fierce. Her hands shook, but her movement was certain. Jeb and Orin appeared above on the rim. The moon made silver on their guns. "No way out," Jeb called. His voice carried satisfaction. Orin grinned. He liked the shape of corners. Callum put Mira behind him and lifted his colt. The cut was narrow. Only one man could drop in at a time. That was their one mercy. A rider slid down. Callum fired once. The man fell and did not rise. The silver badge rolled from his belt and lay in the dust like a coin that had told the wrong truth. Orin fired down. The flash lit the clay wall like a sheet of lightning. Stones spat. A hot line seared Callum's side. He steadied and shot again. Orin's pistol spun off into the dark. Orin roared and dropped into the cut with a knife in his hand. The blade flashed. They met in a tangle of grunts and dust. The knife kissed Callum's ribs and cut shallow. He caught Orin's wrist, forced the blade away and drove his forehead into the outlaw's face. Blood burst from Orin's nose. The knife fell and stuck upright in the dirt for an instant before it toppled. Above, Jeb sought a clean shot. His muzzle flared. Sparks leapt from the wall inches from Mira's cheek. She flinched, covered her ears, shook once, then screamed. The sound rang down the cut and up the rim. It was thin and sharp and alive. Jeb froze. Orin stared. The lie broke open in that sound. She could hear Callum hauled Orin in close and put the colt to his head. He pulled the trigger. The cylinder clicked empty. Dust drifted in a pale curtain. The arroyo held its breath. Somewhere a nightbird cried once and was quiet. Dawn found them under cottonwoods at the old river bend, where the ground held a cool memory of water. The leaves moved in a soft breeze. The sky lifted from grey to pale gold. Birds tried their voices and kept them. Callum sat with his back against a trunk. Blood had dried at his side. The cut was shallow, but it argued with every breath. Mira knelt beside him. She tore a strip from her hem and wrapped the wound with care and steady hands. Her hair was tangled, but her eyes were calm now. They were still storm-dark, but the storm had purpose. "How long have you pretended?" Callum asked. His voice was quiet. It did not press. "Since my father died," Mira said. Her voice was rough at the edges, but clear. Letty wanted a servant, not a daughter. Silence was safer. Then deafness was safer than silence. She paused. "But she sold me anyway because I was still myself." Callum looked at her and saw not a burden but a person with a spine like a rail tied true. He nodded once. "That is the part she could not buy," he said. Hoofbeats sounded on the far bank. Sheriff Mallory rode into the light. He was old. His hair was white. His eyes were tired in the way of men who remember better choices. He took off his hat and held it against his chest. He looked at the dried blood and the dust and the shape of tracks in the soft places. "I heard there was trouble," he said. "And I heard who brought it." He put his hat back on. "The law says what the law has always said. People are not property. Letty Pike is leaving town. She will not find a welcome on my streets again." "Because of justice?" Callum asked. "Because of mourning," the sheriff said. "Sometimes that is the only reason men remember the law." He looked at Mira. "Do you wish to come with me?" "There is a place in town that is safe for a few days." Mira stood. She looked east where the day opened. She looked at Callum's side. She looked at her own hands. "I wish to work," she said. "I wish to learn to read. I wish to use what I hear." She turned to Callum. "If there is work at your ranch, I will do it. If there is a book, I will try it." "There is work," Callum said. There is a book. He rose slowly. Pain tugged at his stitches. There is also a fence that sings when the wind comes right. You will hear it. They walked back by the long road. By noon they reached the Hayes place. It was a lonely ranch, but it did not look as lonely as it had the day before. Callum buried the roan behind the barn. He cut a straight post for a marker. Mira set the stone at its base, true and careful. She stood there a long moment with her head bowed and her hands quiet, as if listening to something good that was far away and moving closer. That night, the kitchen lantern burned steady. The stew sent up quiet steam. Mira sat at the table with a tattered primer. She traced letters with one finger. She shaped sounds with her lips. Some were small and broken. Others found their full shape. Callum leaned in the doorway and listened. The wind moved through the cottonwoods and made a soft music there. He spoke at last. If you were still with Letty, he asked, what would you do? Mira did not look up from the page. I would run, she said, and then I would speak. Sometimes that is the whole war, Callum answered. The lantern's flame did not flicker. It held like a promise. Outside, the night lay clear. Far away, somewhere on another road, a cane might be tapping toward a new town and a new lie. But here there was a porch, a fence that would sing in the right wind, and a book that would open one page at a time. If you were in Mira's place, what would you do? Tell us in the comments. Like this story and subscribe for the next Wild West tale. And if you want to see how the next battle unfolds, do not miss the next story. Subscribe now.